Lieutenant Commander Marcus Halloway lowered his spotting scope and shook his head, with the kind of finality that came from 17 years of combat experience turning impossible situations into calculated risks. The gesture carried weight, authority, the unspoken message that some problems had no solutions. Out of range, Chief. That enemy sniper is at least 2,400 meters up on that ridge. Even with your 338 Lapua, the ballistics don't work. Wind elevation, temperature, too many variables at that distance. We need air support or artillery. Chief Petty Officer Kira Brennan adjusted her position behind her rifle, studying the distant ridge through her Schmidt and Bender scope, calculating factors that most snipers never considered at ranges where bullets spent more time in flight than most firefights lasted. Her gray-green eyes tracked movement patterns, wind shifts, heat mirage rising from sun-baked rock, the mathematics of death at extreme distance. The enemy sniper had been terrorizing Helmand Valley for 3 days. 6 coalition soldiers dead, 13 wounded, all precision shots from extended range that suggested professional military training rather than insurgent marksmanship. Every patrol, every movement drew fire from that ridge, and conventional responses had failed. The sniper displaced after every shot returned hours later continued the psychological warfare that kept forward operating base Talon effectively pinned. Behind Brennan, 2 SEAL operators, Petty Officer First Class Garrett Sullivan and Petty Officer Second Class Paige Westbrook, maintained security while their sniper studied a target that physics and probability said couldn't be engaged with available weapon systems. What Commander Halloway didn't know, what he was about to discover, was that Kira Brennan didn't calculate shots the way conventional snipers did. That her understanding of external ballistics exceeded what was taught in sniper schools, and that 400 meters wasn't out of range if you understood that bullets didn't fly in straight lines but followed precise parabolic trajectories that could be predicted if you knew the mathematics. The crisis had started 4 days earlier, when Staff Sergeant David Hayes, a good soldier with 3 combat tours and twin 6-year-old daughters waiting at home, had his head removed by a precision shot while conducting a routine patrol 2 kilometers from Fob Talon. The shot had come from the Northern Ridge Complex, a series of elevated positions that dominated the valley and provided perfect overwatch for anyone with the patience and skill to exploit them. The distance to 220 meters, a range that exceeded conventional counter-sniper response capability. The next day, 2 more soldiers were hit, 1 killed, 1 wounded, both shots from the northern ridge, both at ranges exceeding 900 meters, both demonstrating marksmanship that suggested professional military training, someone who knew what they were doing. Someone designated the Reaper by intelligence personnel tracking the threat. Naval Special Warfare had been operating from Phobie Talon for 3 weeks, conducting direct action missions against high-value targets in the region. When the sniper problem emerged, Halloway had recognized it as a threat that needed immediate attention. 6 American soldiers dead in 72 hours, 13 wounded. A professional shooter making the valley impassable. "We've got a trained operator terrorizing this valley," Halloway had told his team during the morning briefing. 6 KIA in 3 days, all precision shots from extreme range. This isn't some insurgent with an old Dragunov. This is someone who understands long-range ballistics. We need to eliminate this threat before he kills anyone else. Kira Brennan had studied the pattern of shootings, the terrain, the distances involved. She'd been a SEAL sniper for 6 years, had made shots in combat that appeared in training case studies, and had spent her entire adult life understanding ballistics with a depth that bordered on obsession. "The shots are coming from the Northern Ridge Complex," she'd said, pointing to the topographic map spread across the operations table. "Ranges from 1,900 to 2,400 meters based on victim locations. The shooter is mobile, takes a shot, displaces, returns later. Professional counter-sniper tactics." Halloway had studied the map, calculating angles and distances with the practiced eye of someone who'd spent nearly 2 decades planning combat operations. "Can you engage at those ranges?" "Yes, sir. My TAC 338 is effective out to 1,800 meters with proper conditions. Beyond that, ballistics become increasingly challenging, but not impossible. We've tried air support. The Reaper goes to ground before aircraft arrive. We've tried artillery. Too much civilian infrastructure nearby for effective fire missions without unacceptable collateral damage. We need a sniper solution. Eliminate the threat with precision fire that doesn't create secondary casualties." Brennan had nodded, her expression calm despite the weight of what was being asked. "Give me Sullivan and Westbrook for security. We'll establish an overwatch position with clear sight lines to the ridge complex. When the Reaper reveals his position, I'll engage." That had been the plan. What happened would exceed everyone's expectations except Brennan's, because she'd spent 17 years preparing for exactly this moment. Brennan's team had moved into position at Ukuru 400, using darkness to establish an overwatch post on elevated ground. That provided clear sight lines to the northern ridge complex. The position was 920 meters from FOB Talon, elevated enough to clear intervening terrain, concealed enough to avoid enemy observation. Sullivan and Westbrook had established security, one watching their rear approach, one monitoring the eastern valley, both ready to provide suppressive fire if the position was compromised. Both carried M4 carbines and enough ammunition to hold off a reinforced squad if necessary. Brennan had set up her rifle range-finding equipment, weather station, and observation tools with the methodical precision of someone who understood that preparation separated success from catastrophic failure at extreme range. Her equipment was selected with purpose. The Macmillan TAC 338 rifle featured a 27-inch barrel with 110 twist rate, optimized for the 338 Lapua Magnum cartridge. Loaded with 300-grain Berger hybrid bullets, leaving the muzzle at 850 feet per second, the system represented the cutting edge of long-range precision technology. The Schmidt & Bender 525-56 scope provided exceptional clarity at extreme magnification. A Kestrel 5700 Elite weather station measured atmospheric conditions. A Garmin Fortrex ballistic calculator processed complex mathematics. A Leica vector rangefinder confirmed distances to 2,500 meters. But hardware was just tools. The real weapon was Brennan's understanding of how bullets behaved in flight. Most snipers learned simplified ballistics. Drop tables. Basic wind calls. Straightforward adjustments for distance. Point, calculate, shoot. Brennan had studied advanced external ballistics with the intensity of someone preparing for doctoral research. She understood that bullets didn't follow simple trajectories but were affected by dozens of variables that interacted in complex ways. Coriolis effect. Earth's rotation affecting bullet flight over extreme distances. Spin drift. The rifle's twist rate causing horizontal deflection independent of wind. Aerodynamic jump. How the bullet left the barrel affected by barrel harmonics. Atmospheric conditions. Temperature, pressure, humidity, all affecting drag coefficients in ways that standard tables couldn't account for. Wind, not just speed but direction at multiple altitudes as the bullet climbed and descended through its parabolic arc. Terrain effects, how geography created microclimates that altered conditions across the bullet's flight path. At 800 meters, these variables could be simplified. At 1,500 meters, they became important. At 2,400 meters, they were everything. The difference between a hit and a miss, measured in feet, determined by calculations most people couldn't perform without a computer and expertise most snipers never developed. Commander Halloway had joined them at 0600, bringing his 20-power spotting scope and the command presence that came from leading men in combat for nearly 2 decades. He was an experienced SEAL operator, respected leader, and competent shooter. But he wasn't a precision long-range specialist, and his understanding of extreme-range ballistics came from standard training that emphasized practical application over theoretical understanding. They'd waited through the morning watching the ridge complex, looking for any sign of the enemy sniper who'd been terrorizing the valley. Professional patience, the kind that separated operators from amateurs. At 11:47 hours, Brennan's patience was rewarded. Contact. Northern Ridge, far end. I've got movement in the rocks at approximately... She paused, worked her laser rangefinder, the device, painting the target with invisible infrared energy and measuring the return time with nanosecond precision. 394 meters, confirmed. That's the Reaper setting up position. Halloway swung his spotting scope to the indicated location. Through the high-powered optics, he could see a figure moving among rocks, setting up a rifle, preparing to engage targets in the valley below. The ghillie suit, the deliberate movements, the professional setup, everything confirming this was their threat. Confirmed. That's our target. He worked his own rangefinder, verifying distance. Range is 400 meters, give or take. Wind is shifting maybe 8 to 10 knots from the east with gusts. Temperature is 28 Celsius. Atmospheric pressure. He checked his weather station. Standard for this elevation. He turned to Brennan, his expression carrying the weight of command decisions that meant life or death. Chief, can you make this shot? Brennan studied the target through her rifle scope. The enemy sniper was visible just barely as a dark shape among lighter rocks. Not a clean silhouette, but enough to identify a human presence. At this distance, the target appeared tiny, barely distinguishable from surrounding terrain, a speck that wavered in the heat mirage rising from sun-heated rock. She worked through her calculations with the speed that came from 17 years of practice. Range 394 meters, wind 8 to 10 knots easterly but shifting. She could see vegetation at various elevations moving differently, indicating wind shear. Temperature 28 degrees Celsius, which would affect air density and therefore drag. Humidity, she estimated 32% based on conditions. Elevation significant, requiring adjustment for thinner air. Angle slight upward shot, requiring geometric compensation. Then the advanced factors. Coriolis effect at this range would push the bullet right by approximately 9 inches. Spin drift from her right-hand twist barrel would add another 7 inches right. The bullet would be in flight for approximately 3.95 seconds, traveling in a high arc that would peak at nearly 85 feet above the bore line before descending to target. She worked through the mathematics in her head, calculations that would take most people 15 minutes with a calculator. Physics she'd practiced so many times, the math was instinctive. Muscle memory translated to ballistic computation. This is outside your weapon system's effective range, Halloway said, still looking through his spotting scope at the distant target. The 338 Lapua is good to about 1,800 meters in ideal conditions. We're at 2,400 with variable wind. The drop alone is what, probably 350 inches, that's almost 30 feet of drop. And the wind drift, 368 inches of drop. Brennan said, her voice carrying the calm certainty of someone who'd done this calculation 1,000 times. Assuming standard atmospheric conditions, which we don't have, the temperature and elevation change that to approximately 368 inches. Wind drift is approximately 102 inches at 10 knots steady. But the wind isn't steady. It's variable with altitude, which means I need to calculate different drift for different portions of the trajectory. Halloway stared at her. You can calculate that. I can approximate it. The bullet will be in flight for 3.95 seconds. During the first second, it's moving fast and is less affected by wind. During the final 1.5 seconds, it's moving slower and is more affected. The wind also varies by altitude. I can see from vegetation that it's stronger at mid-level than at ground level or at peak trajectory. So I need to weight my wind call toward the middle portion of flight where the bullet is slowest and most susceptible. That's... Holloway shook his head. That's not how they teach wind calls in sniper school. Sniper school teaches simplified methods that work at normal engagement ranges, sir. This isn't a normal engagement range. At 400 meters, simplified methods introduce errors larger than the target. You need advanced calculations or you don't hit. Sullivan, listening while maintaining security, spoke up without taking his eyes off his sector. Ma'am, are you saying you can actually hit a target at that distance? I'm saying the physics allows it. Whether I execute properly is a different question. At this range, a 1-degree error in angle translates to about 42 inches of miss. A 1-knot error in wind call is 25 inches of miss. A 5-degree error in temperature estimation is 12 inches. Everything has to be right, every calculation, every fundamental. Holloway studied the distant target through his optics. The enemy sniper had completed his setup, was scanning the valley below, preparing to engage coalition forces. A patrol was scheduled to depart FOB Talon at 1200 hours. 12 men walking into the Reaper's kill zone. Chief Brennan, if you miss, you alert him to our position and give him time to displace. We might not get another opportunity. He'll know we're hunting him. Yes, sir. But if I don't engage, he continues killing our people. Staff Sergeant Hayes had twin daughters, 6 years old. They'll grow up without their father. How many more families suffer that if I choose the safe option? Risk versus benefit analysis favors taking the shot. Holloway thought for a long moment. 17 years of combat experience processing variables, tactical considerations, mission parameters, the weight of command. Then he nodded. Make the shot, Chief. Show me what extreme range precision looks like. Brennan settled into her shooting position with the deliberate care of someone who understood that position determined everything at extreme range. The bipod was firmly planted, legs adjusted for perfect height. Her body positioned at a 15-degree angle to the rifle axis, left leg straight, right leg bent, creating natural point of aim that required no muscle tension to maintain. Stock weld firm against her cheek, eye relief perfect at 3.5 inches from the scope. Bubble level centered, eliminating rifle cant. She worked through her pre-shot routine with the methodical precision of ritual. Breathing controlled, slow and deep, reducing heart rate. Heart rate steady at 62 beats per minute, trained resting rate that came from years of cardiovascular conditioning. Mind-focused, narrowing attention to only what mattered: target, wind, calculations, fundamentals. Through her Schmidt and Bender scope at 25 power magnification, the target was barely visible. Just a dark shape among rocks made tiny by distance, wavering slightly in the heat mirage that rose from sun-heated terrain. A shape that could have been a person or could have been a rock formation. Only movement confirmed it was human. She accessed her ballistic calculator, a Garmin Fortrex mounted on her wrist, and input the variables with practice speed. Range 2394 meters, angle 13.5 degrees uphill, temperature 28 Celsius, barometric pressure 29.87 inches of mercury, humidity 32%, wind 10 knots at 90 degrees direct crosswind. The calculator processed the data, accounting for atmospheric effects, trajectory arc, flight time, gravity. The output appeared on the small screen: elevation correction 353 clicks up, windage correction 43 clicks right. But Brennan didn't trust technology alone. She verified the output against her own understanding of the physics, mental calculation checking computer calculation. Drop of 368 inches seemed correct for this range and temperature. Wind drift of 102 inches for 10 knots checked against her experience. She added manual corrections. The calculator didn't account for Coriolis effect, 3 clicks right. Spin drift 2 clicks right. Total windage 48 clicks right. She dialed her elevation turret with careful precision. Each click represented 1/4 minute of angle. 353 clicks meant she was aiming 88.25 minutes of angle above the target. At 2,394 meters, that translated to 30.6 feet. Her scope was now aimed at empty sky, nearly 31 feet above where the target actually was, creating the parabolic trajectory needed for the bullet to reach the distant ridge. Wind was the harder problem. She studied vegetation at various elevations, estimated wind speed and direction at different altitudes, weighted her calculations toward the middle trajectory where the bullet would be slowest and most affected by crosswind. She settled on 102 inches right for base wind drift plus 16 inches for Coriolis and spin drift. 48 clicks on her windage turret, 12 minutes of angle. At the target, that meant aiming 12 feet to the left. Her rifle was now aimed at a point in empty space approximately 31 feet above and 12 feet to the left of where the target actually was. To an observer, it would look like she was aiming at nothing. But that's where the bullet needed to go to arrive at the target 95 seconds later, after climbing 85 feet above the bore line, drifting right under wind and Coriolis effect and descending back to target elevation. She settled her breathing, placed her finger on the trigger, waited for her natural respiratory pause, that moment between breaths where the body was stillest and muscle tension minimized. Her hands trembled slightly. She noticed, controlled it. 17 years of preparation for this moment. Her father's voice, a memory from age 14, teaching her to shoot. Precision is knowing yourself under pressure, Kira. Master yourself first, master the shot second. She touched the 2 sets of dog tags around her neck, hers and her father's. Master Sergeant Cole Brennan killed Afghanistan 2007 by an enemy sniper at long range. She'd been 12 years old when uniformed officers arrived at their door. Had spent 17 years since then preparing to face someone like the Reaper. To stop the cycle. To prevent other 12-year-old girls from losing their fathers. The trigger broke clean at 3.5 pounds of pressure. The .338 Lapua Magnum roared. The rifle pushed back against her shoulder with authority. 45 foot-pounds of recoil energy absorbed through proper position and follow-through. The 300-grain bullet left the barrel at 250 feet per second, 228,000 RPM spin imparted by rifling supersonic crack splitting the air. For the first second, the bullet was supersonic, covering nearly 869 meters, while dropping only 16 feet, still climbing due to the extreme upward angle of the bore. The wind barely affected it at this speed, the bullet moving too fast for atmospheric conditions to create significant drift. For the next 1.5 seconds, the bullet transitioned through transonic speeds, slowing from 2,850 feet per second to 150, becoming more susceptible to wind and environmental effects. It covered another 100 meters while dropping 198 feet total, now descending from its peak trajectory 85 feet above the bore line. Wind pushed it right. Coriolis effect added drift as Earth rotated beneath the bullet's flight path. Atmospheric conditions altered trajectory in ways that simplified tables couldn't predict. For the final 1.45 seconds, the bullet was subsonic, slow enough that wind had maximum effect. Drag increasing exponentially as the bullet pushed through air molecules at decreasing velocity. It covered the remaining 425 meters while dropping the final 154 inches, all corrections elevation windage. Coriolis spin drift culminating in a ballistic solution that existed in 3-dimensional space across 4 seconds of time. All of this happened in the time it takes to count 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004. Through his spotting scope, Commander Holloway watched the target. For 3 full seconds, nothing happened. The enemy sniper continued scanning the valley, completely unaware that a bullet was in flight, that death was arcing through the sky at decreasing velocity but inevitable trajectory. Then the target's head snapped back in a pink mist that was visible even at 2,394 meters. The body collapsed among the rocks, all tension, leaving muscle and bone in the instant transition from alive to not. Holloway stared through his optics, processing what he'd just witnessed. 17 years of combat experience, thousands of shots observed. Nothing had prepared him for watching someone hit a human target at nearly 1.5 miles with a conventional rifle. Holy Chief Brennan, you just made a shot that, according to every manual I've read, every training course I've taken, shouldn't be physically possible. Brennan worked her bolt with practiced efficiency, ejecting the spent cartridge, chambering a fresh 300-grain round. She returned to her scope, scanning the area around the fallen target for additional threats. Professional discipline overriding any impulse towards celebration. Not impossible, sir. Just requires accounting for variables that simplified ballistics tables ignore. The Reaper won't be terrorizing this valley anymore. Now we need confirmation and intelligence recovery. Sullivan, watching through his own optics, lowered them slowly and looked at Brennan with an expression that mixed respect and disbelief. Ma'am, I've been a SEAL for 9 years. That's the most impossible thing I've ever seen someone accomplish. Westbrook, maintaining rear security, spoke without taking her eyes off her sector. Did she really just hit a human-sized target at 400 meters? That's like 1.5 miles. That's not shooting. That's applied physics at a level I didn't know existed in combat. Holloway continued staring through his spotting scope, studying the distant target that wasn't moving anymore, that would never move again. Chief, walk me through that shot. How did you calculate all those variables in, 3 minutes? External ballistic software, sir. Ballistic calculator accounts for all the major factors: range, wind, temperature, pressure, humidity, Coriolis, spin, drift angle. I input the conditions, it outputs the corrections. Then I verify against my own understanding of the physics to ensure the calculator isn't giving me bad data. Double-check the math. Trust but verify. So anyone with this software could make that shot? No, sir. The software provides data. Execution is different. At this range, a tiny error in shooting fundamentals, a 1/4-inch error in stock weld, a half-pound variation in trigger pull, a slight cant in the rifle translates to feet of error at the target. The ballistics knowledge gets you close. The shooting fundamentals determine whether you hit. Holloway nodded slowly, understanding settling over him. That's why they train SEAL snipers for years instead of weeks. The fundamentals have to be perfect, ingrained, unconscious. Yes, sir. And even with perfect fundamentals, this shot had maybe 35% probability of success. The variables are too complex, the calculations too dependent on accurate estimation of conditions I can't measure directly. I made my best calculations, executed as well as I could, and everything came together. Skill improves probability, but circumstances still matter. 35%. You took a shot with 65% chance of failure. Better than 0% chance of stopping that sniper, sir. Sometimes you take the shot you have rather than the shot you want. Sullivan spoke up again, voice carrying the weight of someone reassessing everything he thought he knew. Ma'am, with respect, that was the most technically precise piece of shooting I've ever witnessed. You calculated ballistics that would take me hours to figure out, made those calculations in minutes, and put a bullet exactly where you intended at a range most people would call impossible. That's expertise. Brennan remained focused on her scope, scanning for threats, professional to the core. Skill improves probability, Sullivan. Doesn't guarantee success. I got fortunate that wind didn't shift during the 4-second flight time. Fortunate that my range estimation was accurate. Good shooting creates opportunities for success. Circumstances determine whether those opportunities convert to hits. Chief, I'm going to respectfully disagree. Holloway said, his tone carrying the authority of command and the respect of one professional acknowledging another's mastery. I've been a SEAL for 17 years. I've worked with some of the best shooters in the military. What you just did was expertise at a level that exceeds what's taught in our training pipeline. Where did you learn to shoot at these ranges? Brennan paused her scanning, considering the question. Years of practice, sir. Competitive long-range shooting since I was 12. Distances that routinely exceeded 1,500 meters. When I joined the Navy and became a sniper, I continued training at extended ranges, because I understood that modern rifles are capable of much more than conventional training teaches. I spent off-duty time learning advanced ballistics, studying atmospheric effects. When situations like this develop, when we need to engage at extreme range, that training becomes relevant. So you've been preparing for this specific scenario? Not this specific scenario, sir, but situations where conventional solutions don't work and advanced techniques become necessary. This qualified. Holloway lowered his spotting scope. Decision made. We need to confirm that kill. Sullivan, Westbrook, prepare to move. We're approaching that ridge to confirm the enemy sniper is deceased and gather intelligence. Brennan, you maintain overwatch during our approach. If there are additional threats, you engage. Yes, sir. The confirmation took 75 minutes. Holloway led Sullivan and Westbrook on a careful approach to the northern ridge, moving through terrain that provided cover while Brennan maintained overwatch with her rifle ready to provide precision fire support if they encountered resistance. When they reached the position where the enemy sniper had been operating, they found exactly what Brennan's shot had accomplished. The Reaper was deceased, killed by a single .338 Lapua Magnum round that had struck him in the upper thoracic cavity just below the neck and exited through his back. The wound pattern was consistent with extreme range precision fire, the bullet having traveled nearly 2,400 meters before impact, retaining enough energy to create catastrophic trauma. Holloway examined the body with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd processed hundreds of casualties. Male, approximately 45 to 50 years old, European features suggesting Slavic origin. Professional military gear, not coalition equipment, but high-quality tactical clothing and load-bearing equipment that suggested extensive training and significant resources. His rifle was a Russian-made Orsis T-5000, a precision weapon system used by professional military snipers worldwide. The .338 Lapua caliber, same as Brennan's TAC 338. The Kales K624i scope, worth $4,000. This was a $12,000 plus setup, professional grade, not insurgent equipment. His ammunition, optics, and ancillary equipment all indicated someone with advanced training and institutional support. This wasn't some fighter who'd picked up a rifle. This was a trained operator conducting systematic military operations. This wasn't some insurgent, Holloway reported over the radio to FOB Talon. This was a professional sniper, probably foreign military contractor. We've got Russian equipment, professional setup, evidence of sustained operations. This individual had been hunting coalition forces with intent and capability. Brennan, maintaining overwatch from her position 394 meters away, responded with characteristic calm. Confirmed, sir. The shots he was making, the precision, the range, the consistency, all indicated professional training. That's why I needed to engage at extreme range. A shooter with this level of skill wouldn't have presented a closer opportunity. He understood standoff distance, thought 400 meters provided safety. Sullivan was examining the rifle and equipment, processing what they'd found. Commander, I've got range cards in his position. Distances marked to various points in the valley. 920 meters, 180 meters, 340 meters, all the ranges where he'd been making kills. He'd prepared this position, done his homework, set up for extended operations. This was systematic, professional, deadly. Westbrook added, voice tight with controlled anger. And now he's not. That shot just eliminated a significant threat to coalition operations in this valley. Holloway picked up a notebook near the sniper's position. a logbook showing dates, targets, distances, conditions. The enemy sniper had been documenting his kills, treating the operation like a professional military assignment, rather than irregular warfare. 6 coalition soldiers killed, 14 wounded. Ranges from 1,900 to 2,400 meters. All precision shots demonstrating advanced marksmanship. Professional notation. Wind speeds, temperature, corrections used. The final entry, October 22, 2024, 11:45 hours. Preparing engagement patrol route, estimated range 2,400 meters. Today, the Reaper had been preparing to kill more soldiers when Brennan's bullet arrived. "This confirms what we suspected," Halloway said, his voice carrying over the radio with the weight of completed mission and lives saved. This wasn't random violence. This was a trained sniper conducting counter-coalition operations with specific objectives. Chief Brennan's shot just ended a campaign that could have killed dozens more soldiers if it had continued. Sullivan continued examining the materials when he found something that made his blood run cold. A folder labeled in Russian. He opened it, processed what he was seeing, then keyed his radio with urgency that transcended normal comm discipline. "Commander, you need to see this immediately. Priority intelligence." Halloway moved to Sullivan's position. The folder contained surveillance photographs, high-resolution images taken at FOB Talon over the past 2 weeks. Training sessions, equipment maintenance, movement patterns, and prominently featured multiple photographs of Kira Brennan. The folder held intelligence files on 12 coalition snipers operating in theater. Each had a threat assessment, capabilities, known effective ranges, deployment patterns, professional dossiers compiled through systematic intelligence collection. Brennan's file was thickest. Photos from multiple angles, notes in Russian which Halloway could read enough of to understand the threat assessment. Female SEAL sniper, exceptional capability, long-range competition background, estimated effective range 1,800-2,000 meters, priority elimination target. The final note, dated 3 days ago, made everything clear. Subject observed conducting advanced training with subordinates. Extreme range techniques noted. Threat level critical. Recommend immediate elimination before capabilities transfer to wider force. Use standard personnel as opportunity targets to draw subject into engagement range. Halloway's jaw tightened as understanding settled. "Chief," he said over the radio, his voice carrying new weight. "The Reaper wasn't just hunting coalition forces. He was hunting you specifically. You were his primary target. Hayes and the others, they died because he was trying to draw you out. This was an assassination operation targeting you." Brennan's response came after a long pause, processing the revelation that 6 soldiers had died as bait for a trap designed to kill her. "Understood, sir. Which means this wasn't just about stopping a threat. It was about survival. Mine and everyone he'd have targeted after eliminating me." The weight of that knowledge settled over the team. The impossible shot hadn't just eliminated a threat to coalition forces. It had ended an assassination campaign targeting the one person who possessed capability to stop the Reaper at his own ranges. 6 soldiers had died, but potentially dozens more would have died if the Reaper had succeeded in eliminating the only coalition sniper who could engage him. As they gathered intelligence materials, logbook, range cards, radio equipment, weapon system, documentation, and the targeting folder, Westbrook suddenly called out with the sharp edge of immediate threat recognition. "Contact northeast, approximately 700 meters, multiple personnel approaching our position. I count 8 moving tactical armed." Halloway immediately assessed the tactical situation with 17 years of combat experience, processing variables in seconds. They were on an exposed ridge with limited cover, carrying intelligence materials that needed extraction with unknown hostile forces approaching their position. "Brennan, we've got movement inbound. Can you see them from your position?" Through her scope from the Overwatch position 394 meters away, Brennan had elevated perspective that the team on the ridge didn't have. She scanned the indicated direction, spotted the threat immediately with the practiced eye of someone trained to find targets others missed. Confirmed. I count 8 personnel armed, moving tactical. They appear to be reinforcements for the Reaper's position. They don't know he's dead yet. ETA to your location approximately 4 minutes at current movement speed. Can you engage? Brennan ranged the approaching force with her laser rangefinder. Range from my position is 1 to 957 meters. I can engage. Success probability at that distance with moving targets is lower than the Reaper shot, but I can provide precision fire support. Recommend you establish defensive positions and I'll keep them suppressed until QRF can reach you. Copy that. Sullivan Westbrook establish defensive positions. We're holding this ridge until quick reaction force arrives. Brennan, you are authorized to engage. Keep those hostiles pinned. The situation had evolved from a simple confirmation mission to a defensive action against superior numbers. The team on the ridge had 3 SEALs against 8 enemy combatants approaching with hostile intent. But they also had something the enemy didn't expect, an Overwatch sniper who just demonstrated the ability to make impossible shots. Brennan selected her first target through her scope, the lead element of the approaching force, someone who appeared to be directing others, pointing, maneuvering the formation. Range 957 meters. Wind had shifted since the Reaper engagement, now not sends from the northeast oblique angle, requiring different calculations. She worked through the ballistic solution with practice speed. This range was well within her capability, less extreme than the 394-meter shot, but complicated by moving targets and shifted atmospheric conditions. 18 seconds of calculation. Elevation 278 clicks. Windage 28 clicks right. Flight time 3.1 seconds. She settled her breathing, found her natural respiratory pause, pressed the trigger. The bullet covered 957 meters in 3.1 seconds. The lead fighter dropped instantly, catastrophic trauma from 300 grains of copper and lead traveling at 980 feet per second. The formation immediately halted, fighters seeking cover, trying to identify where the shot had come from, confusion evident in their movements. Brennan worked her bolt, chambered a fresh round, selected her second target, someone attempting to rally the others standing exposed, pointing directions. Range 963 meters, they'd moved slightly. Minor adjustment for increased distance. 2 clicks elevation. Trigger press. 3 seconds of flight. Impact. The second fighter fell. The enemy force was now fully suppressed, pinned by precision fire from an unknown location they couldn't identify. They couldn't see Brennan's position nearly 2,000 meters away. They only knew that anyone who exposed themselves was getting shot with devastating accuracy from somewhere beyond their ability to return fire effectively. 2 enemy KIA, Brennan reported over the radio with professional calm. Remaining 6 personnel are pinned in rocky area approximately 680 meters from your position. They're not advancing, but they're not retreating either. Standoff achieved. Halloway assessed the tactical situation, weighing variables with the practiced efficiency of command decisions made under fire. Can you keep them pinned until QRF arrives? Yes, sir. I've got sufficient ammunition and they don't know where I'm shooting from. As long as they stay in that position, they're effectively neutralized. QRF ETA. 12 minutes. 2 Blackhawks inbound with door gunners and ground element. For the next 15 minutes, Brennan maintained precision Overwatch fire that kept the enemy force pinned in position. Whenever someone tried to move, she engaged. Not always hitting at 957 meters with moving targets and changing conditions, but getting close enough that the enemy understood movement meant getting shot at with remarkable accuracy. She fired 13 total rounds at the hostile force over the sustained engagement. Hit rate 6, confirmed impacts at ranges from 957 to 20010 meters. 6 enemy KIA from precision fire support. 2 remaining fighters so thoroughly suppressed they couldn't effectively maneuver, couldn't engage Holloway's team, couldn't do anything except keep their heads down and wait for death or rescue. When the Quick Reaction Force arrived, 2 MH-60 Black Hawk helicopters with door gunners and an 8-man SEAL ground element. The enemy force attempted to retreat. Brennan engaged the withdrawal, dropping 1 more fighter before the survivors scattered into terrain where they couldn't be effectively tracked. Final count: 7 enemy KIA between the Reaper and his reinforcements. Unknown number wounded, remainder scattered. Holloway's team had 0 casualties, had successfully gathered intelligence from the enemy sniper's position, including the critical targeting folder, and had defended against a numerically superior force through superior tactics and exceptional precision fire support. As the helicopters extracted Holloway's team and the intelligence materials, Brennan maintained her overwatch position until everyone was safely airborne, professional discipline holding her in place until the mission was complete. Only then did she break down her equipment and move to her own extraction point. The mission had evolved from a single extreme-range precision shot into a sustained precision fire support operation that had eliminated multiple threats across distances that most snipers would consider impossible. Brennan had fired 14 rounds total, 1 at 394 meters that eliminated the primary target. 13 more at ranges from 1957 to 2010 meters that had suppressed and eliminated secondary threats. 14 rounds, 7 confirmed enemy KIA, 6 more enemy combatants suppressed and scattered, 0 friendly casualties. The after-action report would describe it as exemplary precision marksmanship under combat conditions. But for Brennan, it was simply the application of skills she'd spent 17 years developing employed. At the moment when those skills became tactically necessary and morally imperative. Back at Phobie Talon that evening, Brennan sat alone in the armory, methodically cleaning her TAC 338. With the ritualistic care of someone who understood that equipment maintenance was as important as shooting skill. Disassembling, cleaning the bore, inspecting components, documenting the day's shooting in her data book with precise notation. Sullivan found her there, knocked on the door frame to announce his presence. "Chief, the whole base is talking. They're saying you made a shot at 400 meters. That you engaged 8 more hostiles at 2,000. The numbers sound impossible." Brennan didn't look up, focused on running a bore brush through her rifle barrel. 394 meters on the Reaper, 957 to 2010 on the reinforcements. Ranges confirmed by laser rangefinder. Not impossible, just improbable. "Ma'am, I don't even have words. That's legendary." Brennan finally looked up, exhaustion evident in her gray-green eyes despite her controlled expression. "It's not legendary, Sullivan, Derry. It's what Staff Sergeant Hayes deserved. What every soldier in that valley deserves, someone willing to attempt the impossible to protect them." Hayes had twin daughters, 6 years old. They'll grow up without their father. The least I could do was make sure the man who killed him doesn't create any more fatherless children. Sullivan studied her, seeing past the professional facade to the person beneath. "You knew Hayes, trained with him at Coronado. Good man, good soldier. His daughters are the same age I was when I lost my father to an enemy sniper. Afghanistan, 2007. I was 12. I know what they're going through, what they'll go through for the rest of their lives, every birthday, every Father's Day, every graduation. The absence that never heals just becomes familiar." She touched the 2 sets of dog tags around her neck, hers and her father's. "This ends today, Sullivan. The Reaper killed his last soldier, and maybe somewhere 2 6-year-old girls won't have to spend the next 17 years learning to live with a hole in their lives that never fills." Later that evening, Holloway found Brennan in her quarters reviewing mission data with the methodical precision of someone who documented everything for lessons learned and continuous improvement. "Chief, I wanted to check on you. I've been a SEAL for 17 years. I've never seen anything like what you did today." "Just applied physics in training, sir." "No, you did something I thought was impossible. And when I expressed doubt, you stayed professional, made your case with logic and data, and then proved me wrong in the most spectacular way possible." Holloway paused, choosing his words carefully. "Intelligence analyzed the Reaper's materials. Based on his logbook and pattern, he'd been operating for 6 weeks. If you hadn't stopped him today, projections suggest he would have killed another 15 to 20 Coalition soldiers before month's end. And that targeting folder, you were being hunted specifically. He was willing to kill dozens to get to you. You saved a lot of lives, Chief. More than you'll ever know." Brennan was quiet for a long moment, processing. "Then it was worth the fear." "You were afraid?" "Terrified, sir. 35% success probability means 65% chance of failure. 65% chance more soldiers die because I missed. That's fear, real fear. Not about my safety, but about failing the mission, failing the soldiers who needed that shot to succeed. But you took the shot anyway, because 35% is better than 0, sir, and Hayes's daughters deserved someone willing to try." Holloway nodded, respect evident in his expression. "Get some rest, Chief. Tomorrow we start documenting your methodology. Every SEAL sniper in theater needs to learn these techniques. What you've done here changes how we think about precision shooting, about what's possible when conventional solutions fail." Alone in her quarters later that night, Kira Brennan lay in her bunk, exhaustion finally catching up to 17 years of preparation culminating in 4 seconds of bullet flight. The dog tags on her chest, hers and her father's, rose and fell with her breathing. Her last thought before sleep claimed her was simple. "Dad taught me precision is knowing yourself. Today I knew myself well enough to attempt the impossible. Tomorrow I teach others to do the same. And somewhere 2 6-year-old girls would grow up knowing their father's death wasn't for nothing. That someone had cared enough to make the impossible shot, to stop the cycle of violence, to turn grief into purpose and purpose into protection." The story of the 394-meter shot was just beginning. The morning after the impossible shot, Forward Operating Base Talon conducted formal after-action review in the Operations Center. Commander Marcus Holloway stood before Base Commander Colonel James Patterson and assembled staff, presenting facts that would have seemed like fiction if not backed by laser rangefinder data, ballistic calculations, and 7 enemy bodies. At 11:47 hours yesterday, Chief Petty Officer Kira Brennan engaged and eliminated an enemy sniper at a range of 394 meters verified by laser rangefinder and GPS coordinates. The target, designated the Reaper, was killed by a single precision shot. Intelligence materials recovered indicate the enemy sniper was a trained professional, likely foreign military contractor conducting systematic operations against Coalition forces. Chief Brennan's engagement eliminated a significant threat and ended a 3-day period where 6 Coalition personnel were killed and 14 wounded. Colonel Patterson, a career Army officer with 28 years of service spanning multiple combat deployments, studied the range data with the skepticism that came from experience separating possible from impossible. 394 meters, Commander, that's nearly a mile and a half. I wasn't aware that infantry weapons could reliably engage at that distance. They can't, sir, Holloway replied with the directness that characterized special operations culture. Not conventionally. This engagement succeeded because Chief Brennan has specialized training in extreme range precision shooting that exceeds what's taught in standard military sniper courses. She calculated ballistics that most people would need artillery computers for and executed with precision I've never witnessed in 17 years of operations. Patterson turned his attention to Brennan, who stood at attention with the quiet professionalism that marked her approach to everything. Chief, explain your methodology. How did you engage at a range that conventional doctrine says is impossible? Brennan moved to the whiteboard with the calm confidence of someone who'd taught these concepts before, who understood the science so completely that explanation came naturally. Sir, standard sniper training teaches engagement techniques effective to approximately 800 meters with occasional shots to 100-200 meters. These ranges are appropriate for 95% of combat scenarios and represent what most snipers will encounter in their careers. She began drawing on the whiteboard, illustrating trajectory arcs and force vectors with practiced efficiency. My background includes competitive long-range precision shooting where distances routinely exceed 500 meters. When I joined Naval Special Warfare, I continued training at extended ranges, studying advanced ballistics and atmospheric effects that become significant at extreme distances. Walk me through the specific calculations for yesterday's shot. Brennan drew a parabolic curve representing bullet trajectory. At 2,394 meters with 338 Lapua Magnum firing 300-grain bullets at 2,850 feet per second, the bullet experiences 368 inches of drop. That's 30.6 feet. I had to aim more than 30 feet above the target for the bullet to arc downward and impact at target level. She added wind vectors to the diagram. Wind drift at that range with 10-knot crosswind is approximately 102 inches horizontal, but wind isn't constant across distance. It varies by altitude. I observed vegetation at multiple elevations to calculate weighted wind average across the bullet's flight path. Then there are factors most people never consider. Coriolis effect: Earth's rotation causes the bullet to drift right approximately 9 inches at this range in the northern hemisphere. Spin drift from the rifle's barrel twist adds another 7 inches. Atmospheric variables, temperature, pressure, humidity all affect drag coefficients in ways that standard tables don't account for. Patterson processed the information, his expression shifting from skepticism to comprehension. That's artillery-level mathematics, Chief. It's physics, sir. The technology exists. Ballistic calculators can perform these computations in seconds. My role is providing accurate input data range, wind temperature, atmospheric pressure, then verifying the output makes sense based on my understanding of the underlying physics. Finally, executing perfect shooting fundamentals, because at this range, small errors in trigger control or body position translate to feet of missed distance. And you've made shots at these ranges before? Yes, sir. Competitive shooting, 2016 Wyoming Long Range Championship. 450 meters confirmed impact. But that wasn't combat, wasn't time pressure, wasn't lives depending on success. Yesterday was the first time I applied these techniques under combat conditions where failure meant American soldiers died. Patterson nodded slowly, the gesture carrying the weight of command decisions that shaped careers and programs. Chief Brennan, this engagement will be documented in after-action reports and submitted for commendation. You've eliminated a threat that was significantly impacting our operations and demonstrated capabilities that should be shared across the military. I'm recommending you for recognition and requesting that you develop training materials documenting extreme-range techniques for other military snipers. Yes, sir. I'll prepare documentation of the methods and calculations used for yesterday's engagement. Within 48 hours, the story of the 394-meter shot spread through naval special warfare with the velocity that remarkable achievements always traveled through tight-knit communities. SEAL snipers throughout Afghanistan theater were discussing the technical aspects. How Brennan had calculated the ballistics, what equipment she'd used, what techniques enabled success at ranges that most people considered impossible. Petty Officer Second Class Marcus Webb, a young SEAL sniper with 2 years of experience, approached Brennan during evening chow 3 days after the engagement. 23 years old, eager, respectful in the way that junior operators approached senior personnel who'd accomplished something extraordinary. "Chief Brennan, can I ask about the Reaper shot? Everyone's talking about it, but I'm trying to understand the actual methodology. How do you calculate Coriolis effect in the field?" Brennan set down her tray, recognizing the genuine desire to learn that separated operators who improved from those who stagnated. Coriolis is a function of latitude, direction of fire, and range. In Northern Hemisphere, shooting east creates rightward drift. The formula accounts for Earth's rotation speed at your latitude, bullet flight time, and geometry. Most ballistic calculators have Coriolis built in. You input your GPS coordinates and direction of fire, it outputs the correction. But what if the calculator fails? How do you estimate it manually? Rule of thumb, at 2,000 meters in mid-latitudes, Coriolis drift is approximately 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch per second of flight time. A 4-second flight means roughly 2 to 3 inches of drift. Not precise, but gets you in the ballpark if technology fails. Webb pulled out a notebook, writing rapidly. Other snipers at nearby tables were listening, attention focused on the impromptu lesson. Brennan recognized the moment. The hunger for knowledge that characterized professionals who understood that learning never stopped. "You know what?" she said, making a decision that would shape the next 3 months of her deployment. "I'm holding informal training sessions every Tuesday and Thursday evening, 1900 hours, at the long-range berm outside the wire. Anyone interested in extreme range techniques, show up. Bring your rifle, your ballistic calculator, and questions. We'll work through the science and the practical application." By the following Tuesday, 14 snipers from various units had gathered at the long-range berm. SEALs, Army Rangers, Marine Scout snipers, even 2 Afghan National Army partners whose English was limited, but whose desire to learn transcended language barriers. Brennan stood before them as the sun descended toward the horizon, the temperature dropping from brutal to merely uncomfortable. "Gentlemen, I'm not here to teach you to make 400-meter shots routinely. Statistically, most of you will never need to engage at that range in your entire careers. I'm here to teach you what's possible when conventional solutions fail, when you face a threat that operates beyond normal engagement ranges and lives depend on someone attempting the impossible." She held up a .338 Lapua Magnum cartridge, the brass case gleaming in fading sunlight. "This round, fired from a quality rifle, is capable of reaching targets beyond 2,500 meters. The limitation isn't the hardware, it's understanding. Most snipers stop at 200 meters, not because the rifle can't reach farther, but because that's where their training stops. That's where their confidence in calculations stops. Over the next 8 weeks, we're going to extend that range. Week 1, external ballistics theory, how bullets actually fly. Week 2, atmospheric effects and how temperature, pressure, and humidity change everything. Week 3, wind reading across distance gradient calls at multiple altitudes. Week 4, advanced corrections. Coriolis spin drift angle compensation. Week 5, technology, ballistic calculators, weather stations, rangefinders. Week 6, shooting fundamentals at precision levels that eliminate human error. Week 7, mental preparation and handling pressure when lives depend on your shot. Week 8, practical application at 1,500 meters and beyond. An Army Ranger staff sergeant raised his hand. "Chief, if we're never going to use this in combat, why learn it?" "Because you don't know when you'll need it until the moment arrives." The Reaper operated at ranges where he felt safe. He'd studied our tactics, knew our conventional limitations. But limitations are often mental, not physical. I'm teaching you to eliminate mental barriers so that when you face the impossible situation, the target that conventional wisdom says can't be engaged, you have tools to try. The training sessions became legendary at Phobie Talon. Brennan taught with the clarity that came from deep understanding, breaking complex physics into manageable chunks that built systematically toward mastery. She didn't simplify, didn't dumb down, treated every student like someone capable of understanding orbital mechanics if properly taught. The fourth week during the session on Coriolis effect, she had the entire class working through calculations manually before using ballistic calculators, teaching them to understand the underlying physics so they could verify computer outputs, recognize when software gave bad data, troubleshoot in the field. Coriolis exists because Earth rotates, she explained, drawing diagrams that illustrated planetary mechanics. At the equator, Earth's surface moves approximately 1,000 miles per hour eastward. At the poles, zero rotational velocity. Your latitude determines how fast the ground is moving beneath you. When you fire a bullet that's in flight for 4 seconds, Earth rotates during that time. The target moves. The bullet doesn't compensate. Result: apparent drift. Webb, who'd become one of her most dedicated students, worked through the mathematics with intense focus. So in Northern Hemisphere, eastward shots drift right because the target is moving away from the bullet. Exactly. And westward shots drift left because the target is moving toward the bullet faster than the bullet expects. North-south shots have vertical Coriolis components. The effect is three-dimensional, not just horizontal. How do snipers operate without knowing this? They operate at ranges where Coriolis is negligible. At 800 meters, Coriolis drift might be 1 inch. That's within the margin of error for wind estimation. But at 2,000 meters, Coriolis could be 8 inches. That's larger than your target's vital zone. You have to account for it or you miss. 6 weeks into the training program, Brennan took the class to the long-range berm for practical application. Target set at 1,500 meters. Conditions were challenging: 15-knot crosswind, temperature 32 Celsius, mirage distorting sight picture. This is where theory meets reality, she told them. You've done the classroom work. You understand the physics. Now you execute. First round hit at 1,500 meters with these conditions. Who's confident? 3 hands raised out of 14 students. Brennan smiled slightly. Honest self-assessment. Good. By the end of today, all of you will understand what's required. She walked Webb through his first attempt. Read the wind, not just at your position. Look downrange. Watch the mirage. Watch vegetation at 500 meters, 1,000 meters at the target. Webb studied the environment with practiced observations, seeing patterns he'd never noticed before. 6 weeks of training. Wind at position is 12 knots. Mid-range looks stronger, maybe 15. At target, vegetation suggests 10 knots. Variable conditions. Correct. So what's your weighted average for drift calculation? Bullet spends most time in the middle zone where it's slowest. I'll weight toward 15 knots. Call it 13 knots average. Show me the math. Webb worked through calculations with his ballistic calculator, cross-checking outputs against manual computation. Elevation 187 clicks. Windage 34 clicks right plus 2 clicks for Coriolis. Total 36 right. Verify makes sense. What's that in actual drift? At 1,500 meters, 36 clicks is 9 minutes of angle. That's about 47 inches of correction. Does that seem right for 13-knot wind? Think about it. Rule of thumb for 338 Lapua is approximately 7 inches of drift per knot of crosswind at 1,000 meters. At 1,500 meters, that increases. 13 knots times 7 inches is 91 inches at 1,000 meters. Scale to 1,500 meters, you're looking at roughly 65 to 70 inches. Your 47 seems low. Webb recalculated, found his error. I input range as 1,300 instead of 1,500. Windage should be 42 clicks right plus Coriolis, 44 total. Now it makes sense. Execute the shot. Webb settled into position with the fundamentals Brennan had drilled for 6 weeks. Perfect stock weld, consistent eye relief, bubble level centered, natural point of aim verified, breathing controlled, trigger press smooth and straight. The 338 Lapua roared, 3 seconds of flight time. Through spotting scopes, observers watched the bullet impact 6 inches left of center on the target. Miss Webb said, frustration evident. Hit, Brennan corrected. 6 inches at 1,500 meters is 0.4 minutes of angle. That's exceptional shooting. Your fundamentals were perfect. Your calculation was nearly perfect. Wind probably shifted slightly between your read and your shot. That's a combat effective hit. Center mass on a human target. Webb processed the feedback perspective shifting. I was expecting bullseye precision. At 1,500 meters, a 6-inch group is bullseye precision. You're not shooting at paper from a bench rest in controlled conditions. You're shooting in field conditions with wind mirage and time pressure. 6 inches is outstanding. Do it again. By the end of the session, 11 of 14 students had achieved hits within 12 inches of center at 1,500 meters. The 3 who didn't hit had near misses that would have been effective on human-sized targets. Brennan had successfully transferred knowledge that existed in classified communities into the hands of operators who might need it. The 7th week focused on mental preparation, the psychological aspects of extreme-range shooting that separated those who could from those who did when lives depended on performance. Pressure is self-imposed, Brennan told them, sharing lessons her father had taught her 20 years earlier. The bullet doesn't care if someone's watching. The physics don't change based on stakes, but your body responds to perceived pressure with elevated heart rate, adrenaline, muscle tension, all of which degrade shooting fundamentals. How do you manage it? Asked a Marine Scout sniper who'd been struggling with performance under observation. Acknowledge the fear, don't fight it. Fear means you understand the stakes, that you care about the outcome. That's human, that's appropriate. But fear can't control execution. You control execution through process. Focus on the process, breathing, position, trigger press, not the outcome. The outcome is a result of proper process. Control what you can control. She shared the story of the Reaper engagement with complete honesty. Before that shot, my hands were shaking. I was terrified. 35% success probability meant 65% chance more soldiers died because I failed. That fear was overwhelming, but I'd spent 17 years preparing for that moment. I trusted my preparation. I focused on process, breathing, calculations, fundamentals. The outcome took care of itself. What if you'd missed? Then I'd have adjusted and taken a second shot. Learned from the first. Missing doesn't mean failure. Not trying means failure. The only unforgivable error is letting fear prevent you from attempting the impossible when attempting is the only option. 8 weeks after starting the informal training program, Brennan conducted final evaluations. Each student was required to make a cold-bore shot at 2,000 meters with field conditions. No warm-up shots. No practice. First round, complete calculation, execute. 2 students had dropped during the course, acknowledging that the mathematical complexity exceeded their aptitude or the dedication required exceeded their available time. The remaining 12 faced their moment of truth. The success rate was 40%. 5 students out of 12 achieved first-round impacts within 18 inches of center. 4 more hit within 30 inches. 3 missed but demonstrated sound methodology that would succeed with minor adjustments. 40% success at 2,000 meters represented capability that existed nowhere else in the military at the time. Brennan had created a cohort of snipers who could engage targets beyond conventional range, who understood advanced ballistics, who possessed tools for situations where standard solutions failed. But the training program's success created unexpected weight, the human cost of the knowledge she was transferring. 3 weeks after final evaluations, Brennan received a letter during mail call. The return address made her hands tremble. Catherine Hayes, Staff Sergeant David Hayes' widow, the soldier killed by the Reaper, the first casualty, the man whose death had made everything personal. She waited until evening alone in her quarters before opening it. The envelope contained a handwritten letter and 2 crayon drawings. The letter read, "Dear Chief Brennan, I don't know if you'll receive this or if it's appropriate for me to write. The casualty affairs officer told me you were the one who eliminated the sniper who killed my husband, David. I needed to thank you, not for revenge, David wouldn't want that, but because you stopped that man from creating more widows, more fatherless children. Our twin daughters, Emma and Sophia, are 6 years old. They ask me every day when Daddy is coming home. I don't know how to explain that he's not, but I can tell them their father died protecting his teammates and that a brave woman made sure his death wasn't for nothing. That she stopped the bad man so other daddies could come home to their little girls. David talked about you. He said there was a female SEAL sniper at the FOB who shot better than anyone he'd ever seen. He was proud to serve alongside you. I know you can't bring David back, but you've given meaning to his sacrifice. For that I will be forever grateful. Please stay safe. Come home to your own family. With deepest gratitude, Catherine Hayes. P.S. Emma and Sophia drew you pictures. They wanted to say thank you too. The crayon drawings showed stick figures in military uniforms standing beneath American flags. One had "Thank you" written in a child's uncertain letters. The other showed 2 stick figure girls holding hands with a taller stick figure labeled "Hero." Brennan read the letter 3 times, then the tears came. Not the controlled emotion of professional discipline. Full breakdown. 17 years of carrying her father's death, of preparing to face someone like the Reaper, of wondering if any of it mattered. The answer arrived in a widow's handwritten gratitude and children's crayon drawings. Sullivan found her 20 minutes later, still holding the letter, tears streaming down her face. He read the letter silently after she handed it to him, understanding settling over his expression. Chief, you saved a lot of families from going through what yours did. Brennan's voice cracked when she spoke. It doesn't bring Hayes back. Doesn't give those girls their father. No, but it stops the chain. That's everything. That's why we do this. Not for revenge, not for glory, to stop the chain of violence. To make sure the last casualty is actually the last. I keep seeing that bullet flight, 3.95 seconds. Everything could have gone wrong. One gust of wind, one tremor in my hand, one calculation error. If I'd missed. But you didn't, because you spent 17 years preparing for those 4 seconds. That's what professionalism is. That's what your father taught you. That's what you're teaching others now. The weight of Catherine Hayes' letter changed something fundamental in how Brennan approached the remaining months of her deployment. The abstract concept of protecting soldiers became concrete faces. Real families. Children who deserved fathers. The training sessions took on new urgency. 2 months before her scheduled rotation home, Brennan was conducting an advanced wind reading class when Holloway approached with the command presence that indicated official business. Chief, I need to borrow you for a moment. We've got a situation that requires your expertise. They moved to the operations center where Colonel Patterson and intelligence officers were studying terrain maps and drone footage. Patterson looked up as they entered. Chief Brennan, we've identified a high-value target in the northern sector. Taliban commander responsible for IED networks that have killed 43 coalition soldiers in the past 6 months. Intelligence indicates he's meeting with subordinates at a compound tomorrow at 1400 hours. The problem is standoff distance. He pointed to the map. Nearest overwatch position we can establish without compromising the operation is 850 meters from the target compound. We need precision engagement. 1 shot to eliminate the target without collateral damage. Can you make this happen? Brennan studied the map, calculating factors with practiced efficiency. 850 meters is well within capability, sir. Less extreme than the Reaper engagement, What are the constraints? Tight rules of engagement. Target will be in a courtyard with potential civilians nearby. We need positive identification and precision engagement that minimizes collateral damage risk. One-shot confirmed kill, no innocents harmed. I'll need Sullivan and Westbrook for security. 12 hours on station for target pattern of life observation. Authorization to abort if civilians enter the danger zone. Granted. Mission launches 0200 tomorrow. You've got 22 hours to prepare. The mission proceeded with the careful planning that characterized the special operations. Pre-mission brief, equipment inspection, infiltration under darkness, position establishment with clear sight lines to the target compound. Hours of waiting, professional patience. At 14:07 hours, the high-value target emerged into the courtyard exactly as intelligence predicted. Brennan confirmed identity through photographic comparison, verified no civilians were in the danger zone, calculated her ballistic solution with the precision that had become her signature. Range 852 meters, wind 6 knots steady, temperature 30 degrees Celsius, atmospheric pressure standard. The calculations took 90 seconds. The shot took 2.9 seconds of flight time. The target went down with the finality that 300 grains of precisely placed copper and lead delivered. 0 collateral damage. Mission success. High-value target eliminated. 43 American soldiers avenged. Future IED attacks prevented, but for Brennan it was another name added to the list of lives taken. Another moment of understanding that her expertise existed to deliver death with precision. The psychological weight accumulated. Halloway noticed during the extraction flight. "You're quiet, Chief. Clean mission. Textbook execution. What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong, sir. Just processing. That's 8 confirmed kills in 3 months. The Reaper 6 reinforcements, now the HVT. 8 human beings who were alive this morning and aren't tonight because I calculated ballistics correctly and executed fundamentals properly. 8 enemies who were killing Americans, Chief. 8 threats eliminated. That's success." "I know, sir. Logically, I know. But logic doesn't eliminate the weight. These aren't paper targets. They're people. They had families, beliefs, motivations, and I ended them from distances where they never knew I existed. There's weight to that. Should be weight to that." Halloway was quiet for a long moment, the helicopter turbines filling silence. "You know what separates professionals from sociopaths? Chief professionals feel that weight. Acknowledge it. Carry it. Because the moment killing becomes easy, the moment you stop feeling the weight, you've lost something essential. Hold on to that weight. It means you're still human, still moral, still someone who kills because it's necessary, not because it's easy." The final month of Brennan's deployment brought unexpected developments. Naval Special Warfare Command sent official notification through classified channels. Upon completion of her deployment, she was to report to Naval Special Warfare Center in Coronado, California, with orders to establish the Advanced Long-Range Precision School, a formal training program codifying the techniques she'd developed, transferring knowledge across the special operations community. Budget allocation $2.5 million for range facilities, equipment, and technology. Authorization to recruit instructors. Mandate to create curriculum that would become standard for SEAL snipers and available to other services through joint training agreements. The impossible shot at 394 meters had created institutional change. What Brennan had done once would now be taught systematically to hundreds of operators. Her final training session at FOB Talon drew 23 students, nearly double the original 14. Word had spread. Operators from across the theater requested transfer to Talon, specifically to attend Brennan's classes before she rotated home. She stood before them in the fading light of an Afghan evening, the Hindu Kush Mountains purple silhouettes against darkening sky. "Gentlemen, this is our final session. Next week, I rotate stateside to establish a formal school teaching these techniques. Some of you will attend that school. All of you have the foundation to continue developing these skills independently. I want to leave you with one thought. The impossible shot that started all of this, the 394-meter engagement, succeeded because I'd spent 17 years preparing for a moment I didn't know would come. Preparation without knowing when it matters. That's professionalism. That's what separates those who rise to extraordinary moments from those who wish they could. You've learned the physics, the calculations, the techniques. But the real lesson is simpler. Never accept impossible as an answer when attempting is an option. The Reaper operated at ranges where he felt safe because conventional wisdom said engagement was impossible. Conventional wisdom was wrong. Physics said it was possible. Preparation made it achievable. Courage made it happen. When you face your impossible moment, the target everyone says can't be engaged, the situation that conventional solutions can't solve, remember that impossible is just another way of saying, haven't tried yet. Calculate the solution, trust your preparation, execute your fundamentals, and make the impossible happen. Webb approached after the session ended, notebook filled with 17 weeks of detailed notes. Chief, I want to thank you. I came to your first class thinking I was a pretty good sniper. You showed me I didn't know anything about what's actually possible. You changed how I think about shooting, about problem solving, about what one person with the right knowledge can accomplish. You did the work, Webb. I just provided the framework. You chose to learn, chose to practice, chose to push beyond comfortable ranges into territory that scared you. That's all you. Keep learning. Keep pushing. In 5 years, you'll be teaching others what I taught you. That's how knowledge spreads. That's how we get better. The day before her scheduled departure, Brennan walked the perimeter of FOB Talon one final time, memorizing terrain that had shaped 3 months of her life. The long-range berm where she'd taught 17 training sessions. The operations center where impossible had become routine. The northern ridge where the Reaper had died 394 meters from her rifle. Holloway found her there, watching the sun set over mountains that had seen empires rise and fall for millennia. Thinking about the shot, thinking about everything. The shot, the training, the 8 lives taken, the unknown number saved because those 8 threats don't exist anymore. The students who'll carry this knowledge forward. Hayes's daughters growing up without their father, but at least growing up safe. All of it. You changed this war, Chief. Maybe just this valley, just this FOB, just this 3-month rotation. But you changed it. Made it safer. Made our people more capable. That's legacy. Legacy feels heavy, sir. Good legacies should feel heavy. Means they matter. Means they're worth carrying. The extraction flight lifted off from FOB Talon at 6:30 the following morning, carrying Brennan and 15 other personnel rotating back to the States. As the helicopter climbed and the FOB shrank to toy soldier scale below, she looked out over Helmand Valley one final time. 8 enemy combatants eliminated, 23 students trained, 17 weeks of pushing human capability to edges that most people thought didn't exist. One impossible shot that proved impossible was just another problem waiting for someone with the right knowledge and courage to solve it. The legend of the 394-meter shot would spread far beyond FOB Talon. Within 6 months, Brennan's methodology would be documented in classified training manuals. Within a year, the Advanced Long-Range Precision School would graduate its first class. Within 5 years, students of her students would be teaching the techniques to the next generation. But in that moment, watching Afghanistan disappear beneath the helicopter, Kira Brennan was simply exhausted, ready to go home, ready to honor the knowledge her father had given her by sharing it as widely as possible, ready to transform the impossible shot into impossible shots, plural, made by operators she'd trained protecting soldiers who'd never know her name. The weight of 8 lives taken would never fully lift. Catherine Hayes's letter would stay in her personal effects for the rest of her life, reminder that every shot carried consequences beyond ballistics. Emma and Sophia's crayon drawings would go on her wall, promise that the weight served purpose. Sullivan sat beside her during the flight, understanding without words that sometimes professionals needed silence more than conversation. After an hour, he finally spoke. "Chief, what you did back there, the training, the shots, all of it, that's going to save lives for years. Decades, maybe. Every operator you trained will train others. Knowledge spreads, capability multiplies. That's how we honor the fallen. Not through revenge, through making sure their deaths mean something, through protecting the next generation." Brennan nodded, too tired for words but grateful for the understanding. The impossible shot had been 4 seconds of bullet flight. The real work had been 17 years of preparation before and 17 weeks of teaching after. The legacy would be measured in lives saved by people she'd never meet, using techniques she'd demonstrated, solving impossible problems because someone had shown them that impossible just meant difficult, not insurmountable. Somewhere over the Atlantic Ocean between Afghanistan and home, Kira Brennan finally allowed herself to believe what everyone kept telling her, that the impossible shot had mattered, that the weight was worth carrying, that teaching others to make their own impossible shots was the highest form of service, and that her father, watching from wherever the fallen go, was proud of the shooter his daughter had become and the teacher she was becoming. The legend was just beginning. But the legend was never the point. The point was preparation meeting opportunity, knowledge defeating ignorance, courage overcoming fear, and impossible becoming merely improbable, then achievable, then routine. One precise shot at a time. 6 months after the impossible shot, Chief Petty Officer Kira Brennan stood in an empty warehouse at Naval Special Warfare Center in Coronado, California, staring at 45,000 square feet of concrete floor and bare metal rafters that would become the Advanced Long-Range Precision School. The space smelled of dust and possibility. Captain David Richardson, Special Operations Training Director, walked beside her with the purposeful stride of someone who'd spent 30 years turning vision into reality. "Chief, you've got 18 months to build this from nothing into the premier long-range shooting school in the world. $2.5 million in funding. Authorization to recruit 4 instructor staff. Mandate to create curriculum that changes how we think about precision engagement." Brennan studied the empty space, mental calculations already converting vacancy into shooting lanes. Classroom areas, equipment storage, ballistic testing facilities. "Sir, I want to include partner nations in the program, not just U.S. forces, Canadians, British, Australians, anyone with legitimate special operations sniper programs who can benefit from advanced techniques." Richardson nodded approval. "Agreed. This knowledge shouldn't be limited by nationality. It should be limited by need and capability. Build the best program possible. Make it available to those who'll use it to protect their people." The first 3 months were construction and curriculum development. Brennan worked 16-hour days translating combat experience and informal teaching sessions at FOB Talon into systematic instruction that could be replicated by other instructors. The science had to be rigorous. The techniques had to be teachable. The standards had to be unforgiving. She wrote and rewrote the course outline 17 times before satisfaction arrived. Phase 1, 2 weeks of ballistic science theory. Atmospheric effects, mathematical foundations. Phase 2, 2 weeks of technology integration, ballistic calculators. Weather stations, range-finding equipment. Phase 3, 3 weeks of shooting fundamentals. Refinement at levels that eliminated human error as a variable. Phase 4, 3 weeks of practical application at progressively increasing ranges from 1,000 to 2,500 meters. Total course length 10 weeks. Selection criteria must already be qualified military sniper with minimum 2 years of operational experience. Maximum class size 12 students per iteration, ensuring high instructor-to-student ratio. Expected failure rate 30 to 40% because not everyone possessed the aptitude or dedication for extreme range precision. Garrett Sullivan transferred from SEAL team assignment to become primary instructor alongside Brennan. Paige Westbrook joined as equipment and technology specialist. 2 civilian long-range shooting competitors with backgrounds in ballistic physics rounded out the instructor cadre. The range facilities took shape through fall and winter. Shooting positions constructed from 100 meters out to 2,700 meters, exceeding the distances that had made Brennan famous because instruction required pushing beyond operational necessity to build confidence at practical ranges. Weather station network installed at 500-meter intervals, providing real-time atmospheric data across the entire range complex. Ballistic calculator systems at each shooting position. Classroom equipped with physics lab equipment, ballistic gelatin testing chambers. High-speed cameras for analyzing bullet flight. The day the range became operational, Brennan fired the ceremonial first shot. Target at 400 meters, conditions nearly identical to the Reaper engagement 18 months earlier. Sullivan spotted for her with the same 20-power scope he'd used in Afghanistan. Range 398 meters, wind 7 knots variable, temperature 18 Celsius. You ready for this, Chief? Brennan settled behind her TAC 338, the rifle that had made history and would now make instructors. Always ready. That's what 17 years of preparation means. The shot broke clean. Flight time 3.9 seconds. Impact 2 inches left of center. Sullivan's voice carried quiet satisfaction. Dead center hit, Chief. Some things don't change. Physics doesn't change. Preparation doesn't change. Everything else is just variables to account for. The first class of Advanced Long-Range Precision School assembled in March, 6 months after Brennan's return from Afghanistan. 12 students, 4 Navy SEALs, 3 Army Special Forces, 2 Marine Scout snipers, 1 Air Force combat controller, 1 Canadian JTF-2 operator, 1 British SAS. Age range 26 to 38. All combat veterans, all accomplished snipers by conventional standards. All about to discover that conventional standards represented the beginning of possibility, not the limit. Brennan stood before them on opening day, the morning sun streaming through warehouse windows, illuminating dust motes that drifted through air thick with expectation and skepticism in equal measure. Gentlemen, welcome to Advanced Long-Range Precision School. I know what you're thinking. Can I really learn to shoot at 2,000 plus meters? Is this even practical in combat? Does capability at extreme range matter when most engagements happen at 400 meters or less? She paused, letting the question settle. The answers may be sometimes and absolutely. This course is hard. The science is complex. The shooting standards are unforgiving. Some of you won't graduate. That's acceptable. This level isn't for everyone. The human variables, hand-eye coordination, mathematical aptitude, dedication to perfection, not everyone has them. No shame in that. But for those who complete this program, you'll possess capability that exists nowhere else in the military. You'll be the solution when there is no solution. The option when conventional wisdom says there are no options. You'll make shots that physics says are possible, but most people say are impossible. A SEAL from Team 3 raised his hand. Senior Chief Daniel Morrison, 34. 12 years of service, Afghanistan veteran with 3 combat deployments. Chief Brennan, with respect, the shot you made in Afghanistan, the 394-meter engagement, that's legendary. But it's also one shot. How do we know it wasn't luck? How do we know these techniques work consistently? Brennan appreciated the directness. Skepticism from intelligent people meant they were thinking critically, not accepting claims on faith. Fair question, Senior Chief. You're right that one shot could be luck, so let me provide additional data points. During that deployment, I made 14 shots between 1,800 and 2,400 meters. 13 hits, 1 miss. The miss came when wind shifted unpredictably during bullet flight. Hit rate 92.8% at extreme range. That's not luck. That's methodology. She pulled up a presentation showing ballistic calculations, hit rates, environmental conditions. But don't take my word for it. Over the next 10 weeks, you'll learn the methodology. You'll make the calculations, you'll execute the shots. By week 8, you'll be engaging targets at 2,000 meters. Success rate among students who complete this program averages 37% first-round hit probability at that range. That's more than 10 times better than untrained shooters attempting the same shots. Methodology works. Question is whether you'll put in the work to master it. The first week destroyed assumptions. Students who'd considered themselves experts in ballistics discovered they'd been working with simplified models that broke down beyond 1-200 meters. The mathematics was undergraduate physics, not incomprehensible but detailed and unforgiving. Every variable mattered. Every calculation required precision. British SAS Sergeant James Hartley, 31, veteran of Iraq and Syria, approached Brennan after the third day looking intellectually overwhelmed. "Ma'am, I've been a sniper for 8 years. I thought I understood external ballistics. This course is showing me I understood maybe 20% of what actually affects bullet flight. It's humbling." That's the appropriate response, Sergeant. Humility creates space for learning. Arrogance closes it. You understood enough ballistics to be effective at conventional ranges. Now you're learning what's required at unconventional ranges. The fundamentals don't change. The complexity increases. Week 2 introduced technology with the understanding that tools enhanced capability but couldn't replace fundamental understanding. Ballistic calculators could process complex mathematics in seconds, but garbage input produced garbage output. Students learned to verify calculator results against manual calculations, to recognize when software gave incorrect data, to troubleshoot in field conditions where technology failed. Week 3 was the crucible, shooting fundamentals refined to levels that eliminated human error. Trigger control perfect enough that 3-pound trigger broke without disturbing sight picture. Breathing controlled enough that respiratory pause provided 5-second window of absolute stillness. Position so stable that the rifle became extension of skeleton, no muscle tension required to maintain aim. Canadian JTF-2 operator Master Corporal Jean-Marc Dubois, 29, bilingual and methodical, struggled with trigger control that had been adequate at 800 meters, but created problems at 1,500. "Chief, I've fired 10,000 rounds in training. My trigger press has never been an issue." Brennan watched through her spotting scope as his groups at 1,500 meters scattered 8 inches horizontally. "Your trigger press is creating 0.3 pounds of lateral pressure before the break. At 800 meters, that's negligible. At 1,500 meters, that's 8 inches of horizontal displacement. We're going to rebuild your trigger technique from foundation level. I've been shooting this way for a decade, and it's gotten you to competent at normal ranges. Now we're pursuing excellence at extreme ranges. Excellence requires rebuilding habits that are good enough into habits that are perfect. You willing to do that work?" Dubois considered pride warring with pragmatism. Pragmatism won. "Yes, ma'am, show me how." They spent 3 hours on the range, Brennan working with him one-on-one, breaking down trigger press into components, rebuilding muscle memory, instilling new patterns. By the end of the session, his groups had tightened to 4 inches. Still not perfect, but improving. "That's progress," Brennan said. "Perfection takes 10,000 repetitions. You've done 50. Keep working." Week 5 brought the first practical application at ranges beyond conventional training. Targets at 1,500 meters, students who'd been confident at 1,000 meters discovered that an additional 500 meters changed everything. Wind that seemed manageable became dominant. Bullet drop that could be estimated required calculation. Environmental effects that could be ignored became critical. First round hit rate 15%. 9 misses, 3 hits out of 12 students. Frustration was universal. Morrison, the skeptical senior chief from Team 3, missed his first shot by 14 inches left. He recalculated, adjusted, fired again. 6 inches right. Third shot impact 2 inches from center. He lowered his rifle, expression mixing relief and disbelief. "Ma'am, I've been shooting for 12 years. That's the hardest 3 shots I've ever made." "That's the point, Senior Chief. We're operating at edges of human capability and equipment performance. Everything has to be right or you miss, but when everything is right, when calculation meets execution, you hit at ranges other people say are impossible." By week 7, the class had consolidated. 2 students had dropped, acknowledging that the mathematical complexity exceeded their aptitude. The remaining 10 had achieved first-round hit rates approaching 30% at 1,800 meters. They'd internalized the methodology, understood the physics, refined their fundamentals to levels approaching Brennan's standards. Week 8 was the moment of truth. Targets at 2,000 meters. Each student got 1 shot. Cold bore, no warm-up. Complete calculation from atmospheric readings to final trigger press. Pass-fail evaluation, the success rate. 4 hits out of 10 attempts, 40%. Morrison made his shot impact 3 inches high. Hartley hit 4 inches left. Dubois centered his perfectly. The Canadian celebration was restrained but genuine. "Ma'am, I never thought I could do that. 2,000 meters, first shot, that's what happens when methodology meets dedication." Brennan finished. "You did the work, learned the science, perfected the fundamentals. The shot is just the result of preparation meeting opportunity." But the course wasn't finished. Week 9 introduced variables that couldn't be controlled. Night shooting with thermal optics, high wind conditions exceeding 20 knots, extreme temperatures from near freezing to 40 Celsius. Moving targets, time pressure, stress inoculation that prepared students for combat conditions. Where calculations happened in minutes, not hours, and execution happened under life-or-death pressure. Week 10 was final evaluation. Each student faced a practical examination that simulated combat decision-making. Unknown distance target between 1,600 and 2,200 meters. Variable wind, 20 minutes to calculate, set up, and execute. 1 shot. The standard was unforgiving, hit within 12 inches of center or fail. 7 students passed. 3 failed, though their misses were close enough to suggest competence that would improve with additional practice. The graduation rate. 70% of those who'd started the course, 58% overall when accounting for the 2 who dropped mid-course. At the graduation ceremony, Captain Richardson addressed the 7 graduates and 3 honor graduates who'd achieved exceptional performance. "Gentlemen, you've completed training that exists nowhere else in the world. You've mastered techniques that most people consider impossible. You possess capability that can change outcomes in situations where conventional solutions fail. But with capability comes responsibility. The knowledge you've gained isn't for competition, isn't for ego, isn't for setting records. It's for protecting your teammates when they face threats at ranges beyond normal engagement. It's for eliminating enemies who think distance provides safety. It's for making the impossible shots that save American lives." Brennan stood beside Richardson, watching 7 operators who'd transformed from skeptics into believers, from competent to exceptional. Morrison approached after the ceremony, the senior chief who'd questioned whether the Reaper shot was luck, who'd discovered through 10 weeks of brutal training that luck had nothing to do with it. "Chief, I owe you an apology. I came here thinking this was overblown, that extreme range shooting was more mythology than methodology. You proved me wrong, not just with what you can do, with what you taught us to do. I made a 2,000-meter shot, first-round impact. 6 months ago, I would have said that was impossible. You showed me impossible just means I haven't learned how yet. You did the work, Senior Chief. I just provided the framework. No, ma'am. You provided the vision, the framework, the standards, the relentless expectation that we could be better than we thought possible. That's teaching at a level most instructors never reach. Thank you. 3 years after the first class graduated, the Advanced Long-Range Precision School had become an institution. 16 courses completed. 127 students graduated from 219 who'd attempted the training. 58% graduation rate that maintained standards without compromise. Graduates had deployed to every combat theater, had made shots at ranges that appeared in classified after-action reports, had saved lives in situations where conventional capabilities would have failed. The statistical impact was measurable. In situations where ALRP graduates engaged threats at extreme range, friendly casualty rates dropped by 63% compared to similar situations without extreme range capability. Graduate-attributed enemy eliminations prevented an estimated 42 coalition casualties based on intelligence analysis of targeted individuals' planned operations. But numbers didn't capture the human impact, didn't capture the families that remained intact because a sniper 100 meters away eliminated a threat before it could materialize. Didn't capture the operators who survived firefights because Overwatch support could engage enemies at distance previously considered safe. 4 years after the impossible shot, Brennan received notification that changed everything. Naval Special Warfare Command requested her presence for a formal ceremony she couldn't decline. The Navy Cross, second highest military decoration for valor awarded for extraordinary heroism in combat. The citation read, "For extraordinary heroism while serving as sniper team leader during combat operations against enemy forces in Helmand Province, Afghanistan." Chief Petty Officer Brennan, demonstrating exceptional tactical expertise and marksmanship skill, engaged and eliminated a high-value enemy sniper at extreme range, neutralizing a significant threat that had killed 6 coalition personnel, and was specifically targeting her for elimination. Her actions directly resulted in saving numerous friendly lives and demonstrated precision shooting capability that established new standards for long-range engagement. Subsequently, Chief Petty Officer Brennan's sustained precision fire support eliminated additional enemy combatants, enabling friendly forces to accomplish their mission without casualties. Her technical expertise, tactical acumen, and unwavering courage under fire reflect great credit upon herself and upheld the highest traditions of the United States Naval Service. Brennan stood at attention while the medal was pinned to her dress uniform, uncomfortable with the attention, but understanding the moment transcended personal preference. The ceremony honored not just her actions, but every sniper who'd pushed capability beyond conventional limits, every instructor who'd taught advanced techniques, every student who'd dedicated themselves to mastering the impossible. Her acceptance speech was characteristically brief. "I accept this recognition on behalf of every sniper who's attempted the impossible shot, for every instructor who taught me fundamentals, for my father, Master Sergeant Cole Brennan, who showed me that precision starts with knowing yourself, and for Staff Sergeant David Hayes and every service member who gave everything. We owe them our best. This medal represents the commitment to delivering that excellence when it matters most." In the audience, Catherine Hayes sat with her daughters, Emma and Sophia, now 11 years old enough to understand that the woman receiving the medal had avenged their father and prevented other children from experiencing the loss they'd endured. After the ceremony, Catherine approached with her daughters. "Chief Brennan, I wanted Emma and Sophia to see this, to understand that their father's death wasn't meaningless, that you honored his sacrifice by stopping the person who killed him and by teaching others to protect their teammates the way David tried to protect his. Emma, the more outspoken twin, looked at Brennan with the directness that children possessed before social filters developed. Are you going to keep protecting soldiers, keep teaching people to make impossible shots? Brennan knelt to eye level with the 11-year-old girl who represented every reason the work mattered. Yes, that's what I do. That's what your father did. Protect the people beside you. Make sure everyone comes home when possible. That's the promise. Sophia, quieter but equally intent, asked the harder question. Does it still hurt that your dad died and you couldn't save him? The question hit with sniper precision, finding the vital zone that years of professional discipline protected. Brennan's voice was quiet when she answered. Every day. But the hurt means I loved him, means he mattered. I honor that hurt by making sure other daughters don't lose their fathers when I can prevent it. The hurt becomes purpose. That's how we carry loss. 7 years after the impossible shot, Chief Petty Officer Kira Brennan, now Senior Chief, stood at a decision point. 18 years of naval service, eligible for retirement in 2 more years. The Advanced Long-Range Precision School was established, successful, institutionalized. 4 instructors she'd personally trained could continue the program without her direct involvement. She could retire, write the definitive textbook on extreme-range ballistics that publishers had been requesting for 3 years. Consult for equipment manufacturers, live a life without the weight of combat operations and the responsibility of training others to deliver death with precision. Or she could stay, continue teaching. Refine the methodology, pursue the incremental improvements that separated good programs from exceptional ones. The decision crystallized during a conversation with her mother, Mary Brennan, now 71, widow of the Army Ranger whose death had set his daughter on a path that led to this moment. They sat on the beach near Coronado, watching the Pacific Ocean repeat its eternal rhythm against the shore. Mary had aged gracefully, carrying her own losses with dignity that Kira had learned to emulate. Your father would be amazed, Mary said, voice carrying across decades of accumulated grief and pride in equal measure. Not just at your shooting, at what you've built, the school, the students, the lives saved. You've turned his death into something that protects hundreds of families. That's legacy that matters. I'm thinking about retiring, Mom. 20 years of service. I've done what I set out to do, honored Dad's memory, taught others. Maybe it's time to step back. Mary was quiet for a long moment, watching waves that had witnessed countless similar conversations across the generations of military families who'd made this coast their home. Do you feel finished, or do you feel tired? What's the difference? Finished means the work is complete, the mission accomplished. You can walk away with satisfaction that you gave everything and achieved what you intended. Tired means you're exhausted, but the work continues. Walking away because you're tired means leaving something undone. Only you can know which is true. Kira considered the question with the analytical precision she applied to ballistic calculations. Was the work finished? The school existed. The methodology was documented. Graduates were teaching the techniques to the next generation. By objective measures, mission accomplished. But there were refinements yet to explore, techniques yet to develop, students yet to train. The difference between 2 400-meter capability and 2 700-meter capability. The integration of emerging technologies, advanced ballistic calculators, improved optics. New ammunition designs, the expansion of extreme-range methodology to other weapons systems. I'm tired, she admitted, but not finished. There's more to do, better versions of what we're already doing. I think I stay. Mary smiled with the understanding that came from spending a lifetime watching her daughter pursue perfection. Then stay, but remember to live too. Your father didn't teach you precision so you could spend your entire life behind a rifle. He taught you precision so you could master yourself and then master your life. Don't forget the second part. The reminder settled into Kira's consciousness with the weight of truth too long ignored. 18 years of service. 18 years of defining herself entirely through military identity and sniper capability. The precision that had made her exceptional had also made her isolated. She started small, dating for the first time in 6 years. Reconnecting with civilian friends who drifted away during deployments and training cycles. Taking weekends off, reading books that weren't ballistic manuals, remembering that life existed beyond the scope reticle. When she met Lieutenant Marcus Webb, a SEAL instructor at basic underwater demolition SEAL training, who'd heard legendary stories about the sniper who'd made the impossible shot, the connection was immediate. He understood the military culture without needing explanation, appreciated precision without being intimidated by her expertise, made her laugh with the ease that came from someone secure enough in his own achievements not to compete with hers. 6 months into their relationship, sitting on the same Coronado beach, where she'd talked with her mother about retirement, Marcus asked the question that military couples navigated with particular complexity. What happens when you deploy again? When I deploy? How do we make this work when the job requires being apart for months at a time? Same way every military couple does. We accept that service comes with sacrifice, that protecting something larger than ourselves means accepting personal cost. We communicate, stay committed, trust that what we build together is worth the time apart. You're not worried. I'm terrified, but I've spent 20 years learning that fear doesn't mean you don't act. It means you act despite the fear. You're worth the risk. They married a year later in a small ceremony attended by family SEAL teammates and advanced long-range precision school graduates who'd traveled from across the country to witness their instructor embrace the life she'd deferred for 2 decades. 10 years after the impossible shot, a new crisis emerged. Intelligence agencies identified a threat that made Brennan's blood run cold. Foreign military contractors training opposing forces in extreme-range sniper techniques. The methodology looked familiar, too familiar. Someone had stolen curriculum from the Advanced Long-Range Precision School, classified training materials, ballistic calculation methods, Brennan's proprietary techniques for teaching impossible shots. And now those techniques were being used against American forces. 3 SEALs had been killed in Syria by enemy snipers making shots at 900+ meters ranges that shouldn't have been possible for insurgent forces. The ballistic signatures, the tactical patterns, the professional discipline all indicated training using methodologies Brennan had developed. The call came at 0200. Rear Admiral Richardson, now SOCOM Operations Director, his voice carrying urgency that pulled Brennan from sleep. Senior Chief, we have a situation. Enemy sniper in Syria operating at extreme range has eliminated 3 SEALs in 2 weeks. Intel suggests the shooter was trained using your methodologies, possibly by someone who attended ALRP or accessed stolen curriculum. We need you back in the fight. One more deployment. Stop this threat before more SEALs die from techniques you created. Marcus, lying beside her, heard enough of the conversation to understand. When she hung up, he said quietly, "You're going." Not a question, a statement. Understanding. My techniques, my responsibility. If someone's killing American soldiers using methods I developed, then you stop them. I know. He pulled her close. Come home safe. That's all I ask. 2 weeks later, Forward Operating Base Sentinel, Syria. Brennan, now 40 years old, back in combat operations after 7 years focused on teaching. Sullivan and Westbrook had volunteered to join her, the old team together again. The enemy sniper called himself the Student, mocking call signs suggesting he'd learned from American techniques. His pattern was professional, patient, deadly, and his effective range matched Brennan's own. This wasn't the Reaper, this was someone who'd studied Brennan's methods, who understood advanced ballistics, who could make the impossible shots because someone had taught him how. Intel suggested the student had access to stolen ALRP curriculum, that he'd been trained specifically to counter American extreme-range capabilities, that he considered himself Brennan's equal, or her superior. For 4 days, Brennan studied the student's pattern, his shots, his ranges, his techniques, and she saw her own methodology reflected back, the weighted wind calculations, the advanced Coriolis corrections, the precision that came from systematic training. He was good, exceptional, maybe as good as she'd been at 29, but she was 40 now, 11 years older, slower reflexes, eyes not quite as sharp. The question that haunted her, was she still capable of matching a younger shooter using her own techniques against her? On the 5th day, the student made his mistake. He took a shot at a patrol, missed intentionally to draw a response, and stayed in position too long, taunting, confident. Brennan ranged him 2,520 meters, beyond the Reaper engagement, beyond anything she'd attempted in combat. Sullivan spotting beside her. "Chief, that's extreme even for you. And the conditions, winds gusting to 18 knots, temperatures 41 Celsius. This is harder than the Reaper shot. He's using my techniques. I wrote the curriculum he learned from. I know how he calculates, how he thinks. That's the advantage." But doubt crept in, 11 years older, thousands of training rounds wearing on her body. Could she still execute at the level required? Brennan worked through calculations she'd performed 1,000 times. But her hands trembled more than they had 11 years ago. Her eyes struggled with the heat mirage more than they once had. Age showed itself in subtle degradations of capability. The student knew she was there, was waiting for her shot. This was personal for him, proving he'd surpassed the teacher. Range 2, 520 meters, wind 14 knots, gusting to 18, temperature 41 degrees Celsius. Conditions worse than any she'd faced in combat. She calculated, recalculated, triple-checked. Elevation 388 clicks, windage 59 clicks right. Then she did something she'd never done before, a combat shot. She doubted. What if age had degraded her capability too much? What if she missed and the student killed more SEALs? What if her techniques, her legacy, her life's work now served the enemy? Sullivan saw it. "Chief, you've got this. You're Kira Brennan. You made the impossible shot. You can make it again." "I was 29 then. I'm 40 now. Different shooter. Same fundamentals, same knowledge. Age doesn't erase what you've mastered. It refines it. You've got 11 more years of experience. Use it." Brennan settled into position, breathing controlled despite doubt, heart rate elevated despite training. This wasn't just a shot. This was validation that everything she'd built, everything she'd taught still mattered, still worked, still saved lives. She touched her father's dog tags one more time, whispered, "Guide this one, Dad." Trigger press. Flight time 4.1 seconds. Longest of her career. Through the spotting scope, Sullivan watched. 4 seconds felt like 4 years. Then impact. Center mass, 2,520 meters. The student never knew what hit him. Sullivan's voice cracked with emotion. "Hit, perfect hit. Chief, you just made a shot 13 years in the making. Proved that impossible stays possible when you master the fundamentals. Proved that you're still the best at what you do." But Brennan didn't celebrate. She worked her bolt, scanned for additional threats, maintained professional discipline. Because that's what separated operators from everyone else. Not the impossible shots, the discipline to stay focused after making them. When they reached the student's position, they found the stolen curriculum. Training materials with Brennan's name on them. Notes in the margins showing how he'd studied her techniques, learned her methods, tried to beat her at her own game. He'd been 31 years old, 9 years younger, at his physical peak, and he'd lost to a 40-year-old woman because fundamentals trumped youth, because knowledge outlasted physical capability, because mastery persisted when everything else degraded. The mission ended. 3 SEALs avenged, the threat eliminated, the stolen techniques proven insufficient against the original master. But for Brennan, the real victory was simpler. She'd proven to herself that age hadn't stolen what mattered, that the impossible shot wasn't a moment of youth, but a product of mastery that transcended age. She was still the best at what she did, still capable, still relevant, still the shooter her father had trained her to become. 15 years after the impossible shot, the Advanced Long-Range Precision School had evolved beyond Brennan's initial vision. The curriculum had expanded to 12 weeks. Student capacity had increased to 16 per class. International partnership agreements brought operators from 14 allied nations. Graduate success rate had improved to 63% through refined selection criteria and enhanced instruction techniques. But the core remained unchanged: physics-based methodology, unforgiving standards. The belief that impossible was just another word for difficult, and difficult could be mastered through proper preparation and flawless execution. Brennan, now 39 years old, Senior Chief Petty Officer with 21 years of service, had become the institutional face of extreme-range precision. She'd written the definitive textbook, Advanced External Ballistics Theory and Application at Extended Range. The book had become required reading at every military sniper school in the United States and most allied nations. She'd presented at special operations conferences explaining methodology to audiences of generals and admirals who needed to understand capability their units possessed. She'd consulted with ammunition manufacturers and optics companies, pushing industry to develop equipment that matched the techniques her school taught. But the work she valued most remained teaching, standing on the range with students who arrived skeptical and left transformed, watching the moment when theoretical understanding crystallized into practical capability. The expression on a student's face when they made their first 2,000-meter shot and realized that everything they'd believed about limitations was wrong. Master Sergeant Jake Coleman, the Army Special Forces operator who'd been Brennan's breakthrough student in the very first class 7 years earlier, had become an instructor at the school. His own impossible shot, a 100-meter engagement in Iraq that saved a pinned-down Ranger platoon, had validated the methodology in combat conditions that skeptics couldn't dismiss. He approached Brennan during the graduation of the 42nd class, carrying news that would reshape her understanding of impact. "Chief, I wanted to show you something. I've been tracking our graduates, not just the school's graduates, but second-generation students. People taught by our graduates who learned the techniques and are now teaching others." He pulled up a database showing network effects that Brennan hadn't fully appreciated. "We've graduated 387 students directly through the school. Those students have subsequently trained an estimated 1,200 additional operators through informal instruction and unit-level courses. Third-generation people taught by the second generation adds another 800. We've created a knowledge cascade that's reached over 400 military snipers worldwide. Combat impact is harder to quantify, but based on after-action reports I can access, extreme-range engagements by our graduate network have been credited with preventing an estimated 340 friendly casualties over the past 15 years. That's 340 soldiers who came home because someone made an impossible shot at a critical moment." Brennan processed the numbers with the same analytical precision she applied to ballistic calculations. One impossible shot in Afghanistan had created institutional change that rippled across 15 years, touching thousands of lives through direct protection and knowledge transfer. The Reaper engagement had mattered not because of its technical difficulty, But because it proved methodology could be taught, capability could be transferred, impossible could become routine. 340 families that didn't lose someone, she said quietly. 340 versions of 12-year-old me who didn't spend the next 20 years learning to live with absence. That's worth carrying the weight. Coleman nodded, understanding. That's what I thought when I compiled the data. I wanted you to know the full impact. The shot you made wasn't the end of the story, it was the beginning. And the story's still being written every time a graduate makes an impossible shot. The final validation came from an unexpected source. Catherine Hayes requested to meet at the Advanced Long-Range Precision School, bringing her daughters Emma and Sophia, now 16 years old juniors in high school, extraordinary young women who'd transformed childhood tragedy into purpose. They toured the facility, Brennan explaining the ranges, the technology, the methodology that had started with their father's death and the Reaper's elimination. Emma, who'd inherited her father's intensity and focus, asked detailed questions about ballistic calculations. Sophia, more introspective, wanted to understand the psychological aspects of extreme-range shooting. After the tour, Catherine made a request that carried weight beyond words. Chief Brennan, my daughters want to attend West Point. They want to serve. But before they decide, I wanted them to understand the full cost. Not just what you've accomplished, but what you've carried. Brennan looked at Catherine, seeing something in the widow's eyes that went beyond gratitude, a request for honesty. Emma, Sophia, Catherine said, I want you to ask Chief Brennan the question we discussed. Sophia, the quieter twin, spoke first. Chief Brennan, do you regret becoming a sniper? Do you regret the people you've killed? The question hit harder than any she'd faced in 15 years. Not in debriefs, not in awards ceremonies, but from a 16-year-old girl whose father had died in the profession Brennan represented. Brennan didn't give the easy answer, didn't give the patriotic answer. She gave the true answer. Every day I carry the weight of 8 lives I've taken in combat. I see their faces, I know they had families, beliefs, reasons for fighting. I don't regret stopping them, they were legitimate threats, killing American soldiers. But I regret that stopping them required ending them. There's a difference. Emma, the intense one, pressed. But would you do it again if you could go back knowing the weight? Yes, because the alternative, letting the Reaper continue killing, letting threats operate. Because stopping them is hard, that weight would be heavier. Your father understood that. Service means carrying weight so others don't have to. Catherine's eyes glistened. That's what I wanted them to hear. Not the glory, the weight. Because if they serve, they'll carry weight too. Different weight maybe, but weight nonetheless. Then Catherine revealed why this conversation mattered so deeply. Emma wants to be a sniper, like you. Like her father wanted to be before he became infantry. I needed her to understand what that actually means, not the medals, not the recognition, the weight. Brennan knelt to eye level with Emma, seeing herself at 16, young, idealistic, determined to honor her father without fully understanding the cost. Emma, if you become a sniper, you'll spend years training. You'll master mathematics and physics most people never learn. You'll develop skills that seem impossible. And then one day you'll use those skills to end someone's life from a distance where they never see you coming. You'll save your teammates, protect your country, and you'll carry that person with you forever. She paused, making sure Emma heard not just the words but the weight behind them. The question isn't whether you can do it. The question is whether you're willing to carry what comes after. Because the shooting is the easy part. The carrying is what defines you. Emma nodded slowly, processing truth that recruiting commercials never mentioned. Thank you for being honest. That helps me understand what I'm choosing. Sophia asked the harder question. Does it still hurt that your dad died and you couldn't save him? Brennan's voice was quiet when she answered, honest in a way she'd never been in public. Every day. But the hurt means I loved him. means he mattered. I honor that hurt by making sure other daughters don't lose their fathers when I can prevent it. The hurt becomes purpose. That's how we carry loss. We transform it into protection for others. Catherine embraced Brennan, two women who'd lost the men who shaped their lives, who'd found different ways to carry that loss forward. "Thank you," Catherine whispered, "for stopping him, for honoring David, for showing my daughters what service actually looks like. Not the poster version, the real version." As they left, Emma turned back. "Chief Brennan, I'm still going to West Point, still going to serve. But now I understand what I'm choosing. Thank you for that." Watching them walk away, Brennan felt something shift. The weight she'd carried for 15 years didn't lighten, but it felt more purposeful, more shared, more worth carrying. Because Emma and Sophia would serve, would protect others, would carry their own weight, but they'd do it with eyes open, understanding the cost, choosing it anyway. That was legacy, not just teaching technique, teaching the full truth of what service meant. 20 years after the impossible shot, Senior Chief Petty Officer Kira Brennan, now 49 years old, stood before her final class at Advanced Long Range Precision School. 28 years of naval service, more than enough for retirement. This was the last time she'd teach. The class didn't know it yet, but she did. "Gentlemen," she began, as she had for 47 classes before this one, "welcome to Advanced Long Range Precision School. Over the next 12 weeks, I'm going to teach you to make shots most people consider impossible." But this time, her voice carried something different, not just instruction. Finality. The weight of knowing this was the last time she'd pass knowledge forward directly. Week 12. Final evaluation. 12 students, 9 passed, 3 failed honorably. 63% success rate, exactly matching 20 years of data. At graduation, Brennan gave her final speech as instructor. 20 years ago, I made a shot that changed my life. 394 meters. The Reaper engagement. You've all heard the story, but here's what that story doesn't tell you. That shot took 4 seconds of bullet flight, but it took 17 years of preparation. 17 years of learning fundamentals, of mastering ballistics, of understanding that impossible just means I haven't learned how yet. The legacy isn't the 4 seconds, it's the 17 years before, and the 20 years after, teaching others that impossible is negotiable. You 9 graduates represent the 502nd through 510th students to complete this program. You join a network of over 500 operators worldwide who've learned that limitations exist to be challenged. When you make your impossible shot, and you will remember, it's not about you. It's about the teammates you protect, the families who stay whole because you attempted what everyone else said couldn't be done. That's the legacy, not the shot, the lives protected by the shot. She paused, emotion threatening professional composure for the first time in 28 years of service. This is my final class. I'm retiring. But the legacy continues through you, through every impossible shot you make, through every student you teach, through every life you protect. Make the impossible possible, one precise shot at a time. Retirement ceremony. 6 months later, the ceremony honored 28 years of service, but Brennan knew the real honor was in the front row. Catherine Hayes, now 52, with daughters Emma and Sophia, both 22, both West Point graduates, both second lieutenants in the Army. Emma had become a sniper, Sophia intelligence officer, both serving, both carrying weight, both honoring their father by protecting others. Mary Brennan, now 82, sat beside them, carrying her own losses, her own pride, watching her daughter retire with honors that would have made her husband beam with pride. Marcus Brennan's husband of 14 years sat beside Mary, understanding that his wife was transitioning not from service to retirement, but from one form of service to another. The Admiral pinning Brennan's retirement award summarized 28 years, Senior Chief Brennan's legacy cannot be measured in awards or medals. It is measured in lives saved by the 510 graduates she trained, in the estimated 600-plus enemy combatants eliminated at extreme range by her graduate network, in the 800-plus coalition casualties prevented through capabilities she taught. But her greatest legacy is this: she proved that impossible is just another word for difficult. And difficult can be mastered through preparation, dedication, and courage to attempt what everyone else says cannot be done. The United States Navy thanks you for your service, the Special Operations community thanks you for your knowledge, and the families of soldiers protected by your graduates thank you for their loved ones who came home. Final scene: Coronado Beach, sunset. Kira Brennan, no longer senior chief, just Kira, now walked the beach where she'd made so many decisions. Her father's dog tags still around her neck, 28 years of carrying them, 28 years of honoring his memory through precision, through teaching, through protection of others. Mary walked beside her, age showing but spirit undiminished. "You did it," Mary said. "Everything you set out to do. Honored your father. Mastered the impossible, taught hundreds, saved thousands. You can rest now." "I'm not tired, Mom. I'm complete. There's a difference." "Your father would be so proud." "I know. I've known for 20 years, but it still matters hearing you say it." They walked in comfortable silence, watching the Pacific repeat its eternal rhythm. The same ocean that had witnessed Kira's decision to stay in service, to build the school, to dedicate her life to teaching impossible shots. Emma and Sophia joined them, young officers with their whole careers ahead, carrying the lessons Kira had taught through example rather than words. "Chief Brennan," Emma said, using the title that would always define Kira regardless of retirement. "I made my first combat shot last month, won 650 meters, saved my team from ambush, and the entire time I calculated I heard your voice, wait your wind call, account for Coriolis, trust your fundamentals. The shot saved us, but your training made the shot possible." Sophia added, "Same here. I'm intelligence, not a shooter, but I plan operations knowing we have extreme range capability because of what you built. It changes everything." Kira looked at these young women, daughters of a soldier who died to enemy sniper fire, now serving, now protecting others, now preventing more families from experiencing their loss. That was legacy. That was closure. That was worth every weight carried across 28 years. Marcus approached, wrapping his arm around Kira's shoulders. "You ready to start the next chapter? Writing, consulting, teaching civilians, living without the weight of command? I'm ready to transform the weight, not lose it. The weight made me who I am. I'll carry it differently now, that's all." The sun descended below the horizon, painting the sky in colors that had no names, only emotions. 20 years after the impossible shot, Kira Brennan had completed the journey her father had started her on 37 years earlier, when he taught her that precision meant knowing yourself. She knew herself now, completely, deeply, with the certainty that came from 28 years of proving that impossible just meant difficult, and difficult could be mastered. The impossible shot had been 4 seconds. The legacy was measured in decades, in lives, in students who became teachers, in families who stayed whole. That was worth carrying, worth honoring, worth the weight. One precise shot at a time, and somewhere in that place where the fallen watch over those they've left behind, Master Sergeant Cole Brennan smiled. His daughter had learned the lesson, had mastered herself, had mastered precision, had taught thousands of others to do the same. The impossible shot had been 4 seconds of bullet flight 20 years earlier, but the legacy was measured in decades of lives. Saved students, taught families, kept whole. Because someone had demonstrated that impossible just meant difficult, and difficult could be mastered through preparation, dedication, and the courage to attempt what everyone else said couldn't be done. One precise shot at a time. The story of the impossible shot had become the story of impossible shots, plural. Made by operators Kira Brennan had trained, by students of her students. By the knowledge cascade that would continue long after she retired, long after the last round fired through her TAC 338, long after anyone remembered the specific details of a 394-meter engagement in Afghanistan. Because the real legacy wasn't the shot. It was the understanding that limitations existed to be challenged, that impossible was negotiable, and that one person with the right knowledge and courage could change outcomes that everyone else accepted as inevitable. That was precision. That was legacy. That was worth carrying the weight.